It usually arrives in the evening. You are not doing anything wrong. The room is warm, there is food in the kitchen and something to watch, and nobody is threatening you. And still, somewhere under your ribs, there is a specific ache that you would struggle to describe to anyone. And the strange part is that it does not feel emotional. It feels physical. Most people assume that ache is sadness. It is not sadness. It is closer to hunger. And that is not a metaphor, or a poetic way of putting it, or something people say to sound profound. Your body is running a signal, and the machinery it runs on is almost the same machinery it uses when you have not eaten. So why would being alone register in your body the way an empty stomach does? Start with what loneliness is actually for, because the moment you treat it as a defect, you will never understand it. The psychologist John Cacioppo spent most of his career at the University of Chicago studying this one question, and his central argument reframes everything. He proposed that loneliness is not damage, it is a drive. It belongs in the same category as thirst, hunger, and pain, and it works the same way all of those work. Think about how that category functions. Thirst is not a flaw in your design. It is an unpleasant sensation that exists to make you drink. Pain is not a malfunction. It is an unpleasant sensation that exists to make you stop doing whatever is damaging you. In both cases, the discomfort is the entire point. A body that could not feel thirst would die surrounded by water. Cacioppo's claim was that loneliness is the same kind of instrument, an unpleasant sensation designed to make you do one specific thing: reconnect. And once you see it that way, the question stops being, why does this hurt? The question becomes, what was it protecting? For that, you have to look at what being alone actually meant for most of human history. You are not a strong animal. You cannot outrun most things that want to eat you. You have no meaningful claws, no armor, no venom, and a long, helpless infancy that goes on for years. Every advantage your species has ever had came from the group. Shared food, shared watching, shared knowledge of where the water was in a bad year. A human alone on the ancestral landscape was not lonely in the way you mean it. A human alone was on a countdown. So a system evolved to make sure that never happened quietly. Not a thought, not a decision. A physical alarm that grows more insistent the longer the isolation continues, exactly like the alarm that goes off when you have not eaten. And in 2020, a team of researchers found a way to see that alarm directly. Livia Tomova, Rebecca Sachs, and their colleagues at MIT ran an experiment that sounds simple and is anything but. They took participants and put them through 2 separate days of deprivation. On one day, 10 hours with no food. On the other day, 10 hours with no social contact at all. No conversation, no phone, no messages, nothing. At the end of each, they scanned the participants' brains while showing them pictures. Pictures of food, pictures of people together. After the fasting day, the sight of food produced a strong response in a region of the midbrain associated with craving and wanting. After the isolation day, the sight of people produced a response in the same region, not a similar region, the same one. 10 hours alone had produced a craving signature that looked like 10 hours without food. Think about what that means for the ache you feel in the evening. Your brain is not being dramatic. It is not exaggerating. It is running the wanting system, the same one that fires for calories, and pointing it at other human beings. That work built on something found in mice a few years earlier. A neuroscientist named Gillian Matthews discovered a specific population of dopamine neurons that became more active after a period of isolation, and when they were activated, the animals went looking for company. Switch them off, and that rebound disappeared. A dedicated circuit sitting there whose job appears to be counting how long you have been alone. You have a hunger you cannot eat your way out of. But there is a second system involved, and it explains something even stranger about the language you use. Why do you say a breakup hurts? Why is a rejection described as painful? Why does exclusion feel like being wounded when nothing has touched your body at all? At UCLA, a neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger designed an experiment to test whether that language was just metaphor. She used a simple computer game called Cyberball, developed by the psychologist Kipling Williams. 3 players toss a virtual ball between them. The participant believes the other 2 are real people. For the first stretch, everyone plays normally. Then the other 2 players stop throwing to them. That is the entire manipulation. No insults, no stated rejection, just a ball that stops coming. So prolonged isolation turns up your threat sensitivity automatically. But look at what that does to you now. The signal exists to push you toward people, and in pushing, it makes other people look more dangerous, which makes you approach more carefully, defend more quickly, withdraw more easily. The very state that is supposed to drive you back into the group makes the group harder to re-enter. That is the trap. Loneliness is one of the few drives that actively interferes with its own solution. Hunger does not make food look threatening. Thirst does not make water seem hostile. This one does. So if you have ever felt lonely and simultaneously found yourself avoiding the exact people who would fix it, you were not being irrational or self-sabotaging. You were experiencing the second half of the mechanism, doing exactly what it was built to do, in a situation it was never built for. And the cost of running this state for years is not just emotional. In 2010, the researcher Julianne Holt-Lunstad and her colleagues at Brigham Young University pooled 148 separate studies covering more than 300,000 people, looking at the relationship between social connection and how long people lived. The finding was that stronger social relationships were associated with a substantially higher likelihood of survival across the follow-up periods, with an effect size that sat alongside well-established medical risk factors. Not happiness, survival, which tells you the body was never treating connection as a luxury, it was treating it as a nutrient, and it still does. Now put all of it against the world you actually live in. You are, on paper, the least isolated human being in history. You can reach almost anyone instantly. You can watch 1,000 faces in an evening. You can sit in a full feed of people talking, all night, forever. And the signal does not switch off. Because the alarm was never counting contact, it was counting something much more specific: being known, being relied upon, somebody noticing you were not there. The ancient version of this was not conversation, it was proximity over years, shared risk, the certainty that someone would come looking. Watching a face is not the same input as being seen by one, so the system takes in an enormous volume of social signal, finds almost none of what it is actually measuring, and keeps the alarm running. And because you know intellectually that you are surrounded by people, you conclude that something must be wrong with you personally. Nothing is wrong with you personally. You are eating something that looks like food and does not feed you. That is the whole shape of it. The ache is not weakness, and it is not a character flaw, and it is not evidence that you are unlovable or broken or behind. It is a 300,000-year-old instrument doing its job. In a body it still fits perfectly. In a world it no longer maps onto. It hurts because it was designed to hurt. That was the only way it could work. And there is something almost reassuring in that once you sit with it. Every ancestor you have ever had carried this same alarm. It fired in caves and on plains and in villages, and every single time it fired, it did the same thing it is doing to you right now. It pointed at other people and said, "Go." Not because you are deficient, because being alone genuinely was the most dangerous thing.